Have you ever felt like someone was watching over you, even when you were completely alone? As if some invisible presence circled your home at night, not to scare you, but maybe to protect you? Most people brush off those feelings, chalking them up to exhaustion, stress, or just an overactive imagination. But what if it's not? What if the only thing standing between you and something truly evil is a force no one can see or understand? This is the story of an ordinary person, someone like you, living a quiet, uneventful life until the shadows began to move on their own. A voice whispered their name in the dark. Objects fell. Doors creaked open slowly, but the strangest part? The fear didn't come from the presence, it came from its absence. Something was there. A spirit, maybe. An entity. But the real terror only began when they realized that presence was there to protect them. The question was, protect them from what? What would you do if an unseen force took over your home? Would you run? Call for help? Or try to understand? The line between good and evil can be blurrier than we think, especially when wrapped in mystery, disembodied voices, and secrets buried within old walls. The protagonist in this story tried to follow logic. But logic doesn't survive inside a haunted house. Get ready to dive into a story where suspense and psychological fear intertwine, where a simple creak in the night might reveal an ancient curse, a horrifying climax, and an ending you won't see coming. Not every protector wears a cape, some wear shadows. And when the truth comes out, you might wish you'd never started asking questions at all. Let's begin. But before we do, ask yourself this. If something is protecting you, what exactly is it hiding you from? He wasn't the kind of person who believed in ghosts. Always had both feet firmly planted on the ground, the type who explained everything with logic, science, and a dash of sarcasm. But everything changed that night. He woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, as if he'd been running even though he hadn't moved from bed. There was no sound, yet the silence felt heavy. A nameless fear settled in his chest. From that moment on, his life was never the same. The narrator may be a close friend, or maybe the man himself, telling his story under a veil of anonymity, starts by describing the protagonist's daily life: work, study, rushed breakfasts, phone glued to his hand. Nothing unusual. Until the first voices started. Soft, distant. Like a thought that wasn't his. He tried to ignore it, but that only made things worse. And the more he denied what he felt, the more the supernatural signs revealed themselves. It wasn't just that eerie feeling of being watched. It was like the house itself had eyes. That crack in the wall? It looked like a twisted smile. The bathroom mirror? It fogged up on its own even without hot water. There was always something held back, as if the house was trying to communicate. It wasn't loud or violent. It was a quiet kind of terror. Constant. Creeping. A mystery unfolding in the background of his routine. He tried to rationalize stress, burnout, maybe a vitamin deficiency. But even when he left town for a few days, the pressure in his chest followed. It wasn't tied to the house. It was tied to him. Or rather to something that clung to him. A hidden presence, silent but steady, oddly not always hostile. It felt like it wasn't there to hurt him but to watch over him. That's when the narrative deepens. The storyteller begins connecting the dots, as if whispering directly to the audience, you're not crazy. Someone else has been through this before. And just like that, the suspense tightens. What first seemed like imagination or anxiety begins to take a darker shape. There was more to this than met the eye. And the question that haunted him most was not what was approaching but why. The first time he felt it, it was barely noticeable. Just a chill on the back of his neck, a cold breeze in the hallway even with the windows shut. No sounds. Nothing moved. But his body reacted as if something had screamed in total silence. It was like an invisible entity had brushed past him. He froze for a moment, standing still, and thought him just being paranoid. But the pounding in his chest said otherwise. The invisible danger was starting to show itself. Nights became longer. He kept waking at the same time, 3:17 a.m. Not because of a dream but because of a presence. Something was there. Still. Watching. No form, no noise, just a weight in the air. The room seemed smaller. The shadows heavier. Even the ticking of the clock began to sound threatening. Something was lurking in the dark, a force unknown, and it refused to be ignored. Tired of questioning his sanity, he began experimenting. Left the bedroom door slightly open. Sprinkled salt on the floor. Recorded audio while he slept. The results? The salt was disturbed by morning. The door shut on its own. And the recordings? Full of whispers. Low, distorted voices. Saying his name. He still tried to be skeptical, but deep down, fear had taken root. Something or someone was sharing that house with him. During the day, everything seemed normal. But at night, the furniture creaked like it was alive. The floors moaned under invisible steps. And even when he tried to ignore it, the feeling of being watched never left. He began sleeping with the lights on, phone in hand, listening to podcasts about supernatural stories, ironically, to distract himself. But it only made the tension worse. The more he tried to avoid the topic, the more it found him. One detail stood out: animals stopped coming near. No cats on the walls, no dogs barking at the gate. It was like they knew something he didn't. And deep down, he knew too. He wasn't alone. And it wasn't just a lost soul or a wandering spirit. It had purpose. And as terrifying as it was, the entity didn't seem to want to harm him, not yet. Was it a protector? Or a predator, just waiting for the right moment? It was on a Wednesday night when things shifted from strange to undeniable. He was having dinner when a loud crack came from the bedroom. He rushed to check and found his bedside lamp knocked over. The same one he used every night. It had never fallen before. No open windows. No earthquakes. Just that sharp sound and an unsettling feeling growing inside him, like something or someone was testing the limits of his sanity. It wasn't just a scare. It was a warning. Days later, a coffee mug slid off the shelf on its own. It didn't slip. It didn't fall. It was pushed, and he saw it happen. The mug hovered for half a second in the air before crashing to the ground. His mind tried to reason it away, but his body froze. He could no longer pretend nothing was happening. The hidden presence was now manifesting physically. The mystery was no longer subtle. It moved in front of his eyes. At night, the noises escalated. Footsteps in the hallway, even though the door was locked. Whispers near his ear, as if someone was speaking from inside the pillow. Even the TV began turning on by itself, always to the same static channel, humming with a sound that seemed to be trying to speak. He kept a log, writing down times, events, anything that might form a pattern. But the pattern was chaos disguised as routine. The feeling of being watched became unbearable. He felt eyes on him even in the bathroom. Mirrors began fogging up with scribbled phrases, like "Don't look or he's watching." And when he wiped the glass, the words vanished like vapor. Friends told him to see a therapist. Or a priest. But deep down, He already knew this wasn't psychological. This was supernatural. Then, one night eerily quiet, he got up for water. And saw the bedroom door slowly creak open even though he had locked it minutes before. A cold gust swept through the room. And he saw something. A shadow. A flicker in the corner of his eye. The outline of a person. But when he turned, nothing was there. Just the echo of a muffled whisper. "Stay inside. He can't come in." That's when he understood. He wasn't just being haunted. He was being protected from something far, far worse. The revelation didn't come like lightning or a divine vision. It came slowly, hidden between the lines of his daily terror. Piece by piece, he realized that invisible entity haunting him wasn't the cause of his fear, it was the shield holding something much worse at bay. One night, after hearing strange noises from the attic, he climbed the stairs with a flashlight, hands trembling. Amid dust and forgotten boxes, he saw circular markings on the floor like something, or someone, had been trying to break out. And scratched into the wall, just one word. Protection. After that, the activity changed. Now, strange things only happened when he was in real danger. A book would fall moments before he tripped. A light would flicker when he stood near the window as if warning him that something was watching from the outside. What once felt like aggression started to look like a system of signs, warnings, almost like invisible hands reaching out to say, "Don't go there." The protector spirit wasn't hostile, it was desperate. Desperate to save him from what? He started trying to communicate. Yes, it sounded insane, but logic had long since been tossed out the window. He left a notebook and pen on the floor before bed. Some mornings, he'd wake up to frantic scribbles. "Careful. Choose. He's back." Short, urgent messages written with force, sometimes trembling. It was as if the spirit was clinging to the last bits of clarity it had. The very thing he feared was now his only ally against an unknown force drawing closer every night. At first, it was hard to accept. To shift from haunted victim to protected by a ghost wasn't exactly easy on the mind. But the evidence was undeniable. Every time the malignant presence crept closer, the house responded. Doors slammed shut. Mirrors cracked. Lights shorted out. It wasn't random anymore. The protector was fighting not for revenge, not for redemption, but simply to hold something back. Something old. Something dark. And over time, he began to feel the difference. There weren't just weird feelings. There were two presences. One steady, thick, almost familiar. The other erratic, restless, invasive. The first was a silent guardian. The second a hunter in the shadows. And even without knowing every detail, one thing was clear. If the first disappeared, the second would come through. The fear now wasn't about what was inside the house. It was about what was waiting outside for its chance to get in. The discovery hit like a punch to the gut. He had been rummaging through an old trunk in the basement, looking for answers, any clue that could explain what had been happening. Inside, he found aged letters, black and white photographs, and a diary. The final pages spoke of recurring dreams, shadows at the windows, voices calling the name of the house's former resident. A name that, whether by coincidence or by curse, was the same as his own. Coincidence? Hard to believe. Especially when the handwriting began to tremble while describing. The other presence, the one that came from the dark. The malevolent entity wasn't hiding anymore. It began showing itself through vivid nightmares, dreams in which he was tied up, surrounded by shadows that whispered secrets in languages he didn't know. He'd wake up with bruises, scratches, drenched in cold sweat. The protector seemed to fight harder each night. Light bulbs burst when the dark force came too close. Objects flew across the room without warning. It was an invisible war, playing out right in front of him. Nights grew shorter. The house, colder. Mirrors began reflecting things that weren't really there. And in one of them, for just a second, he saw a face not his watching him from the corner of the room. Empty eyes. Pale skin. A hungry expression. It was the other presence. And it didn't want to scare him. It wanted in. It wanted to stay. Like it was waiting for an invitation or a break in the protection. It was silent terror, slowly draining his sanity. He tried to escape. Packed a bag. Hit the road. But 20 kilometers out, the car radio crackled to life. "Come back," a voice said, a distorted mix of his own voice and the protector's. He slammed the brakes, heart racing. He couldn't leave. Not yet. Not while this thing remained unresolved. He was bound to something ancient, something buried. A curse that had traveled through bloodlines and found its next host in him. Or maybe its next battleground. So he returned. He knew he was being hunted by something dark, something beyond comprehension. But he also knew he wasn't alone. Not yet. As long as the protector remained, there was hope. But how long could it keep fighting? And what would happen if the Guardian failed? The fear wasn't just about what haunted the house. It was the thought of what might happen if the thing that protected him simply stopped. It all started to make sense when he came across the old house records. Among dusty birth certificates and yellowed deeds, he found a name: Elias Rocha, the same last name as his mother's family. Curious, he called his mom, hesitant to sound insane. Her answer came quickly, but with a long pause behind it. "Elias was my mother's brother. He disappeared when he was young. He lived in that same house." A chill crawled down his spine. The protector had his family's blood. Everything clicked into place. The entity's behavior hadn't been random, it was familiar. The whispers had felt like someone calling him. The way it kept him away from certain parts of the house. The fogged warnings on mirrors. Even the midnight scribbles. It was as if Elias had returned, not in body but as a spirit, trying to protect him from something he himself had once faced, something that had never left. That haunted house wasn't just haunted. It was a battleground between two worlds. The diary confirmed it. One photograph showed a young man with a serious gaze and large hands just like his. The resemblance was undeniable. That was Elias. And he had been trying to warn him all along. A scribbled line in the diary said, "If someone in the family finds this, know that he must never be freed." Confusion turned into reverence. What once felt like a dark force haunting him was a guardian spirit, holding back something far more dangerous. It also explained why the protective presence had never left the house. Elias was bound by loyalty, by guilt, by unfulfilled promises. He had remained since the day of his own end, fighting to keep that evil sealed. And now, maybe, he was passing the mission forward. The protagonist didn't know if he was ready to inherit this war. But one thing was clear: protection has a price. And more often than not, that price isn't kindness. It's sacrifice. Urgency. Pain. Now, it was personal. The protector, a long-lost relative, had sacrificed everything to stop this evil from spreading. But he was growing weaker. The signs were fading. The warnings were less frequent. And the dark presence knew it. With the family link weakening, one question hovered like fog. Would he have the strength to finish what Elias began? Or would he become just another name lost in the walls? It was a rainy night, the kind where the sound of water feels like old stories being whispered. He woke up with a bitter taste in his mouth and the muffled sound of someone crying in the attic. It wasn't human. It was deeper. Heavier. As if the house itself was weeping. He climbed the stairs, step by step, pulled by a force he couldn't name, maybe curiosity, maybe dread. Up there, hidden beneath a red cloth, was an old mirror. He pulled the cloth off and the twist began. The reflection staring back wasn't his. It was Elias. And Elias was crying. The expression in the glass wasn't one of strength, it was of sorrow. With hollow eyes and trembling lips, the spirit whispered. I tried to get rid of him. But now he's in you. Silence swallowed the attic. That's when he understood. He wasn't just being protected. He was the container. The evil presence hadn't been trying to break in. It was already inside him, held there by Elias. And the protection wasn't from the outside world. It was from himself. Everything came rushing in like a fast-forwarded nightmare. The dreams weren't warnings, they were memories. The voices were echoes of a past he hadn't lived, but somehow carried. Elias wasn't just a protector. He was a warden, trying to stop the cycle from completing. This wasn't a fight between two beings. It was a battle within. And the truth was devastating. He wasn't just a victim. He was the new host. He collapsed to his knees, breath shallow. The attic walls began to creak. The mirror cracked down the middle. And then, from inside him, a voice whispered. He's awake. Elias, now in tears, stared into his soul. It was too late. The blood connection had acted like a key. What was once sealed was now spreading. The hidden presence wasn't in the attic anymore. It was with him. Inside him. Laughing. Growing. The biggest twist wasn't discovering a spirit had been protecting him all along. It was realizing the spirit had been trying to protect the world from him. And now, with nothing left to give, Elias faded, dissolving into the shadows of the attic, taking with him the last seal. And what was left? A man. With something ancient, violent, and hungry living behind his eyes. Days passed since that night in the attic. On the surface, everything seemed normal again. He went back to his routine, walking the same streets, greeting the same neighbors, even smiling at the cashier at the grocery store. But if you looked closely, really looked, you'd notice something strange in his eyes. A certain dullness. A blankness. Almost like something else was looking out from behind them. Eyes that carried secrets too heavy to share, not even under torture. Eyes that had seen things no one should see. The house was silent now. Too silent. No more moving objects. No more voices. No more shadowy whispers. But the calm felt artificial, like the air was holding its breath. Because while Elias was gone, the evil hadn't been destroyed. It had simply found a new home. And this time, it wasn't being held back. It had been welcomed. Not just let in, but embraced. People started noticing small changes. The neighbor's dog, who used to wag his tail excitedly, now growled when he passed. Plants near the house began to wither for no reason. And one night, a little girl pointed at him and said, "Mommy, there's a dark man living inside him." The mother chuckled nervously, brushing it off. But the girl's stare didn't change. She had seen what others refused to see. The presence was still there. Only now it was stronger. He began writing compulsively in a notebook. Disconnected words, strange symbols, ancient sketches. as if his own hand was no longer his. Some nights, he'd wake up in the yard with no memory of how he got there. And something deep inside felt hollow. But he didn't fear the emptiness anymore. In a twisted way, the terror had become familiar. Comforting. Warm. Seductive. And then, in the final paragraph of his story, the one you may be reading right now, he wrote something that still echoes. If you found this story, it might already be too late. Because the evil no longer needs the house. It needs eyes. It needs hands. It needs a voice to tell its story. And now that you know, it's seen you, too.